Narcissism is not just a word we toss around in everyday conversation. It's a powerful, deceptive force that has infiltrated society, relationships, and our very understanding of what it means to live in harmony with others. At first glance, it may seem like a personality trait, a simple case of someone being selfish, egocentric, or attention-seeking. But beneath that surface lies something far darker. Narcissism is not merely a disorder. It is a symptom of a spiritual illness, an affliction that has deep roots in the demonic. To understand the true nature of narcissism, we must look beyond the surface and examine the root cause. Narcissism is driven by a deep, unspoken insecurity. While outwardly the narcissist presents themselves as superior, powerful, or unflappable, inside they are constantly battling feelings of inferiority. Their need to be admired, validated, and adored stems from an inner void they cannot fill on their own. This is where the deception begins. The narcissist builds a false self, a counterfeit persona, to hide their shame and insecurities. This mask is what the world sees: the confident, charismatic, even charming individual who seems to have it all together. But behind that mask is a person who craves attention, adoration, and approval because they cannot generate these feelings from within. They need others to affirm their worth, for they have never learned to affirm themselves in truth. This mask is crafted with the help of demonic spirits who thrive on deception. Narcissism is a tool of manipulation, a weapon used by the enemy to twist reality and keep people in bondage to their pride and arrogance. The spirit of narcissism encourages individuals to reject the truth about themselves, that they are not perfect, that they are flawed, and that their value does not come from their appearance or accomplishments, but from who they are in God. When we take a closer look at the behavior of a narcissist, we can see the spirit of deception at work. Narcissists thrive on creating illusions. They craft narratives that paint them as the hero of every story, always right, always justified. They manipulate those around them to serve their agenda, to meet their needs, and to worship their greatness. They will do whatever it takes to maintain the illusion of perfection, even if it means deceiving themselves and others. This is not just a matter of ego. It is a spiritual battle. In fact, narcissism is one of the most potent tools the enemy uses to destroy relationships, families, and communities. The narcissist will gaslight those around them, twisting their words, actions, and intentions, causing them to question their reality. They will rewrite history to suit their narrative, painting themselves as the victim, the martyr, or the unappreciated genius, while the people around them are left confused and gaslighted. One of the most dangerous aspects of narcissism is its ability to isolate individuals. A narcissist will tear down anyone who dares to challenge their worldview or question their behavior. They will attack the very people who love them the most, using their vulnerability as a weapon. Slowly, they chip away at their victim's self-esteem, their sense of reality, and their trust in others. The narcissist wants to be the center of attention, and anyone who dares to share that spotlight becomes a threat. When you are in a relationship with a narcissist, whether it's a friendship, a family relationship, or a romantic partnership, you are not just dealing with someone who has a big ego. You are dealing with a person who has been overtaken by a spirit of pride, manipulation, and deception. The spirit behind narcissism thrives on control and isolation. It thrives on confusion and division. It feeds on insecurity, and it causes chaos in its wake. Think of the countless examples we see in the world today. People with narcissistic traits will often stop at nothing to climb to the top, leaving a trail of broken relationships behind them. They will use others, exploit their vulnerabilities, and break trust to gain power, control, or validation. In the workplace, a narcissist may manipulate colleagues, spread lies about others to get ahead, and create toxic environments where no one feels safe to speak the truth. In families, they will pit relatives against each other, using guilt, shame, and lies to turn people against one another for the sake of maintaining their own power. Even in our entertainment industry, we often see narcissism celebrated, normalized, and even romanticized. Celebrities, influencers, and public figures are often portrayed as larger-than-life personalities who are deserving of all admiration, fame, and attention. But behind the glitz and glamour, many of these individuals are suffering from deep insecurities, and their narcissism is a result of that pain. Their outward bravado is simply a facade, a defense mechanism to protect themselves from the emptiness inside. Yet, because their behavior is praised, they continue to perpetuate the cycle of deception. This is why narcissism is so dangerous. It is an attack on the very fabric of truth. It makes us believe in falsehoods, encourages us to admire what is broken, and creates a distorted view of the world. Narcissists may seem confident, powerful, and charming, but underneath it all, they are consumed by fear and pride. They are enslaved by their need to be worshipped, validated, and adored. And in doing so, they lead others down a path of confusion and self-doubt. When we encounter narcissism, whether in ourselves or in others, we must recognize it for what it truly is, a demonic force at work. It is not just a personality trait or a weakness. It is a tool used by the enemy to keep people trapped in a cycle of deception and pride, to destroy relationships, and to separate us from the truth of who we are in Christ. But here's the good news. Once we see narcissism for what it is, we can begin to break free from its grip. By acknowledging the spiritual roots of narcissism and choosing to confront the lies it tells us, we can find healing. The power to overcome narcissism lies in understanding the truth about ourselves, that we are loved, worthy, and valuable, not because of what we do or how others perceive us, but because of who we are in the eyes of God. When we stop seeking validation from the world and begin to look inward, to truly see ourselves as God sees us, we begin to break the hold of narcissism. Only then can we begin to heal from the wounds of insecurity, pride, and deception. Only then can we move from the darkness of narcissism into the light of truth and freedom. The spirit of pride is the silent and insidious force that lies at the heart of narcissism. It is the very foundation upon which the narcissistic personality is built. Pride in its most destructive form is not merely a sense of self-worth. It is an exaggerated, delusional belief that one is superior to others, that one's needs, desires, and existence matter more than anyone else's. At its core, this is not just a character flaw. It is a spiritual disease that blinds the individual to their true identity and separates them from the very essence of God's design for them. Pride is not new. In fact, the first rebellion ever committed in the spiritual realm was an act of pride. The Bible reveals that Lucifer, once the most beautiful and powerful of all angels, fell from grace because of his desire to elevate himself above God. In Isaiah 14:13-14, Lucifer declares, "I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High." This was the beginning of pride. It was not just a desire for recognition, but a desire for superiority. Lucifer wanted to be worshipped, and in his heart he believed he deserved to be. This spirit of pride does not merely exist in the hearts of narcissists. It is a force that has infiltrated every aspect of human life, from relationships to institutions, from personal behavior to the way societies are structured. The narcissist's pride manifests in the form of an inflated self-presume that demands admiration and respect from everyone around them. They become so consumed by their own sense of superiority that they begin to see others as mere tools for their personal validation, rather than as equal human beings with their own dignity and worth. Pride deceives a narcissist into believing that they are always right, that their perspective is the only valid one. It creates an illusion of perfection, and anyone who challenges or threatens that illusion is met with fierce resistance. The narcissist can never be wrong. Their ego is too fragile to withstand the truth. Their need for validation is so intense that they would rather lie, manipulate, or even destroy relationships than admit fault or weakness. Pride is the great divider. It keeps the narcissist from seeing the beauty of community and connection with others. In fact, true relationships with others require vulnerability, self-awareness, and humility, all of which pride violently rejects. A narcissist, instead of being open to the love and opinions of others, turns inward, focused solely on their own desires, needs, and dreams. They become so self-absorbed that they forget the fundamental truth of human existence. We were made to serve others, not to be served. A narcissist may appear outwardly confident and assertive, but beneath that facade lies a deep insecurity. Their arrogance, their boastful attitude, their need to dominate, all of these are defense mechanisms designed to protect their fragile sense of self. At their core, narcissists fear being exposed as inadequate, incapable, or inferior, and so they overcompensate by building a tower of pride around themselves, making sure no one can see the cracks in their armor. The spirit of pride can manifest in many forms, whether in the workplace, the home, or in social settings. In families, for example, a narcissistic parent may demand that their children live up to impossible standards, belittling them when they fall short. The parent's pride tells them that they are entitled to control their children's lives, to impose their will without question, because their perception of themselves is one of superiority. The narcissistic parent does not see their child as a unique individual with their own gifts, dreams, and needs. They see the child as an extension of their own greatness. In romantic relationships, pride can cause a narcissistic partner to view their significant other as a tool for validation. They may place unreasonable expectations on their partner, demanding constant affirmation, while simultaneously withholding love, affection, or support. The relationship becomes a one-sided affair, with the narcissist expecting to be adored and their partner left drained and neglected. The narcissist's pride demands that they be treated like royalty, while the needs and desires of the other person are cast aside. This imbalance of power leaves the victim feeling insignificant, unheard, and invisible. In the professional realm, narcissistic leaders use pride as a weapon. They may surround themselves with people who are easily manipulated or who flatter their egos, while those who challenge their authority or question their methods are pushed aside or humiliated. Pride is used to dominate and control, to ensure that the narcissist's vision, no matter how flawed, remains the only one in play. The narcissist may take credit for others' hard work, never acknowledging the contributions of their colleagues or employees, for their pride demands that they alone receive the glory. And anyone who dares to take the spotlight from them becomes an enemy to be destroyed. This spirit of pride is not just destructive for the narcissist, it is devastating to everyone around them. It breeds resentment, frustration, and confusion. It leads to broken families, fractured friendships, and toxic work environments. The narcissist's inability to share power, to recognize the value of others, or to give credit where it is due, leaves a trail of wounded souls in their wake. But the worst part of pride is that it blinds the narcissist to the truth. They become so consumed with themselves that they lose sight of the reality of who they are. They believe the lies they tell themselves, that they are more important than others, that they deserve special treatment, that the world revolves around them. They fail to recognize that they are just as human, just as flawed as the next person. They fail to see that true greatness comes from humility, not arrogance. Pride prevents the narcissist from seeking help. It prevents them from acknowledging their own weaknesses and seeking the grace and mercy that God offers. It locks them in a cage of their own making it impossible to experience true healing or transformation. And because pride thrives in secrecy, the narcissist will rarely admit their flaws to anyone, not even themselves. They will do everything in their power to maintain the illusion of perfection, even at the expense of their own well-being and the well-being of those around them. The spirit of pride is dangerous because it distorts the narcissist's perception of themselves, of others, and of God. It tells them that they do not need anyone, that they can survive and thrive on their own. But the truth is, pride isolates them from the very love, grace, and community that they desperately need. It prevents them from experiencing the deep fulfillment that comes from giving and receiving love in healthy, humble relationships. At its core, pride is a lie. It tells us that we are self-sufficient, that we are better than others, and that we are entitled to more than what is rightfully ours. But the truth is that we are all equal in the eyes of God. We all have weaknesses, flaws, and imperfections, and we all need one another. True greatness comes not from elevating ourselves above others, but from serving, loving, and caring for those around us. When we let go of the spirit of pride and embrace humility, we can begin to heal, grow, and experience the fullness of life that God intended for us. The spirit of manipulation is a dark force that fuels narcissism, using cunning and deceit to twist the reality of others to serve a narcissist's own needs. At its core, manipulation is about control. Narcissists are masters of manipulation, using emotional tactics, psychological games, and even affection as tools to dominate and shape the lives of those around them. Manipulation works through subtlety. It often begins with a carefully crafted facade of kindness, attention, and love. In the beginning, the narcissist will shower you with praise, affection, and validation. They may appear to be your greatest supporter, always ready to encourage your dreams, share in your joy, and offer their support. This phase creates a false sense of security and trust. The narcissist knows that they need to make you feel valued and special in order to draw you closer, to make you feel indebted, and to make it easier to control you later. But beneath this initial charm is a dangerous agenda. The narcissist does not give affection for the sake of love. They give affection for the sake of manipulation. They will flatter you, praise you, and win your trust, all to create an emotional bond. Once that bond is established, the real manipulation begins. They will begin to demand things from you, always disguised as requests or simple expectations. At first, it might seem harmless. Perhaps it's a favor, a gesture, or a small sacrifice. But over time, the demands grow and the manipulation deepens. The narcissist uses guilt to control. If you dare to say no or express any desire that conflicts with their own, they will turn on the charm again, making you feel selfish, ungrateful, or unloving. They will twist your words, rewrite the narrative, and convince you that you are the one in the wrong. This emotional blackmail forces you to comply, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of being accused, criticized, or even abandoned. This manipulation extends into more sinister territories. The narcissist will use your vulnerabilities against you, using your deepest fears and insecurities to keep you trapped in their web. They learn your weaknesses, your moments of doubt, and your desires only to exploit them when it suits their purposes. They may use your past mistakes, your brokenness, or your childhood wounds to manipulate your emotions, making you feel as though they are the only ones who understand you, the only ones who can help you. In truth, they are not seeking to help, they are seeking to control. For example, in a family dynamic, the narcissistic parent might use their child's longing for approval against them, demanding constant attention and loyalty while belittling their accomplishments. The child, desperate for validation, becomes ensnared in a cycle of always trying to meet the impossible standards of the narcissistic parent. Over time, the child loses their sense of identity as the narcissist works to make them feel dependent, insecure, and incapable of standing on their own. In romantic relationships, manipulation becomes even more destructive. The narcissist will often love bomb their partner at the beginning of the relationship, showering them with gifts, compliments, and attention. This stage creates an emotional high, leading the partner to believe they have found the perfect person. But as time goes on, the narcissist will begin to subtly change. They may withhold affection, use silence as punishment, or subtly insult their partner to undermine their self-esteem. They will manipulate their partner into believing they are lucky to be with them and that their worth is entirely tied to the narcissist's approval. The narcissist keeps their partner in a constant state of emotional imbalance, always striving to gain their favor, always seeking to meet ever-changing demands. In the workplace, narcissists will often manipulate colleagues and subordinates by taking credit for their hard work. They may inflate their own achievements, always positioning themselves as the one responsible for any success. Meanwhile, they may take advantage of others' contributions, using their authority and influence to maintain a position of power. The narcissist's manipulation is particularly damaging in these environments, as it creates toxic cultures where people are forced to compete for validation and recognition rather than working collaboratively for the common good. The power of manipulation is not just in the actions themselves, but in the emotional impact it has on those who are caught in the narcissist's grip. Over time, the person being manipulated starts to lose themselves. They begin to doubt their instincts, question their worth, and feel constantly off balance. They become so emotionally entangled with the narcissist that they lose their sense of self. This is the true danger of manipulation. It erodes a person's ability to think clearly, to make decisions confidently, and to trust their own feelings. The narcissist wins when their victim is made to feel small, insecure, and dependent. In this way, manipulation becomes a tool of control, keeping the victim locked in a cycle of emotional dependency. The narcissist thrives on this power as it reinforces their sense of superiority and entitlement. They create a world where others exist to meet their needs and fulfill their desires, while the needs of others are ignored, belittled, or dismissed. Deception is the core mechanism that holds narcissism together. It is through deception that the narcissist constructs their false persona, manipulates others, and protects the fragile ego that underlies their pride and need for admiration. The spirit of deception works in the shadows, influencing the narcissist's perceptions of reality and shaping how they interact with the world. The narcissist lives in a carefully curated fantasy. They are not content with the reality of who they are, so they create a distorted version of themselves, one that is far more impressive, powerful, and admired than they could ever be in truth. This is not just about presenting an idealized version of themselves to others. It is about deceiving themselves into believing their own lies. The narcissist believes that they are special, destined for greatness, and that they deserve more than others. They become the victim, and in that state, they are immune to the ramifications of their words, the deed. They surround themselves with adoration, constantly seeking validation to reinforce this distorted image of themselves. The spirit of deception operates by making the narcissist feel invincible. It convinces them that they are above reproach, that their actions are always justified, and that they have the right to control others. This false belief in their own superiority makes the narcissist incapable of seeing their flaws or acknowledging their faults. When confronted with evidence of their wrongdoing, the narcissist will often resort to lies, deflections, and accusations. They may shift blame onto others, gaslight their victims, or even rewrite history to suit their narrative. The most insidious form of deception, however, is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a tactic the narcissist uses to distort another person's sense of reality. It is a deliberate attempt to make someone question their own memory, perception, or sanity. For example, a narcissist might deny events that have clearly taken place, making their victims second-guess themselves. They may accuse others of exaggerating or lying about their behavior, effectively twisting the narrative until the victim no longer knows what is true. Gaslighting is incredibly damaging because it undermines a person's self-confidence and self-trust, leaving them vulnerable to further manipulation and control. In romantic relationships, the narcissist uses gaslighting to maintain control and dominance. When a partner questions their behavior or expresses dissatisfaction, the narcissist will deny any wrongdoing, often turning the situation around to make their partner feel guilty or irrational. The narcissist may say things like, "You're overreacting," or "That never happened. You're imagining it." The constant distortion of reality keeps the victim off balance, questioning their perceptions and their emotions. At a societal level, narcissism fueled by deception creates false narratives that manipulate the public. Narcissistic leaders or figures of power often use deception to craft an image of themselves as the only person capable of solving problems, while masking their failures, flaws, and true motives. They may control the media, spread misinformation, or use charm and persuasion to rally support, even while their actions harm others. The spirit of deception allows them to maintain their status, regardless of the consequences for those they deceive. This deceptive behavior is not just a characteristic of narcissism, it is the very foundation that holds narcissism together. Without deception, the narcissist would have to face the reality of their inadequacies and flaws, but the spirit of deception prevents them from doing so. It keeps them in a perpetual state of denial, unable to accept the truth, and prevents their victims from seeing the truth. The danger of living under the influence of deception is that it keeps us trapped in a false reality. It forces us to question our own truth and undermine our sense of self. It breeds confusion, resentment, and broken trust. The longer we are exposed to the lies of a narcissist, the more we become lost in their illusion. And the more we stay in this deception, the harder it becomes to break free and reclaim our sense of identity. The spirit of isolation is one of the most powerful tools in the narcissist's arsenal. It is through isolation that narcissists sever their victims from the outside world, manipulate their perceptions, and maintain control over every aspect of their lives. Narcissists understand that true power lies in the ability to make others feel alone, dependent, and desperate. By creating a false sense of dependency, the narcissist ensures that their victims are not only trapped emotionally, but also psychologically and socially. Isolation is not always an obvious or overt process. It often starts subtly under the guise of concern, love, or protection. In romantic relationships, the narcissist may begin by distancing their partner from friends and family. At first, it seems harmless. They might claim that they want more one-on-one time, or they may subtly criticize the partner's friends and loved ones. They will paint themselves as the only person who truly understands or supports their partner, feeding them a narrative that reinforces the idea that their world should revolve around the narcissist. Slowly, the narcissist begins to create a wedge between the victim and their support system. They may fabricate lies about others, claiming that friends or family members have bad intentions, are jealous, or don't have the partner's best interests at heart. The narcissist tells their partner that only they can be trusted, that the only way to be truly loved and understood is through them. This tactic isolates the victim emotionally, making them feel like they have no one else to turn to, no one who truly gets them. The narcissist becomes the center of their universe, leaving them unable to recognize the harmful manipulation that is taking place. In families, isolation works in much the same way. The narcissistic parent often controls the relationships between siblings, pitting them against each other, creating competition for attention, or turning one child into their emotional confidant while turning others into outsiders. This dynamic ensures that the narcissist retains control over the emotional energy of the household. The isolated child may feel abandoned, confused, and uncertain of where they belong. They may grow up believing that the narcissist's love is the only love worth seeking, while all other connections are secondary or unimportant. The spirit of isolation extends beyond relationships and into social circles. Narcissists often thrive in environments where they can maintain an image of superiority, and they will actively sabotage anyone or anything that threatens their status. This may include blocking people from networking opportunities, spreading rumors to damage someone's reputation, or sabotaging the success of others to keep the focus solely on themselves. The narcissist's need to control their environment means they seek to isolate others in such a way that only their own needs, desires, and accomplishments are acknowledged. The emotional toll of isolation can be devastating. People who fall under the spell of narcissistic isolation often experience deep loneliness, a sense of betrayal, and confusion. The isolation does not just affect physical relationships, it impacts mental and emotional well-being. The narcissist, with their false charm and emotional manipulation, convinces the victim that they are the only one who truly matters, that they are the only one who can offer love or validation. The victim begins to lose sight of their own self-worth, growing more and more dependent on the narcissist's approval. The isolation also manifests in the victim's inability to speak out or seek help. Narcissists are adept at creating an environment of fear and guilt. When the victim does reach out to others for support, the narcissist often retaliates, accusing them of betrayal, of being disloyal, or of airing dirty laundry. In the mind of the narcissist, the victim's connection to others represents a threat to their control, and they will do whatever it takes to extinguish those external bonds. This manipulation can make the victim feel like they are walking on eggshells, constantly afraid of inciting the narcissist's wrath, while at the same time, they are stripped of their autonomy and emotional stability. The more isolated the victim becomes, the harder it is to break free from the narcissist's grip. This isolation strategy ensures that the victim feels emotionally trapped, as though they have no other place to turn. They may believe that no one else could ever love or care for them in the way the narcissist does, or that they are not capable of surviving outside the relationship. Their self-worth becomes entirely tied to the narcissist's approval, making it nearly impossible to recognize the toxicity of the relationship, let alone leave it. Over time, the narcissist's grip tightens until the victim feels completely dependent on them for emotional survival. In the workplace, narcissists often isolate colleagues or subordinates in a similar fashion. They will cut off people from key networks, withhold information, or create divisions between employees, fostering competition instead of collaboration. The narcissist thrives when others are kept off balance, isolated, and unable to collaborate effectively. By isolating people from their peers, they ensure that their own position of power remains secure. The more isolated the victims are, the more likely they are to defer to the narcissist for validation, approval, and support. The narcissist's ultimate goal in using isolation is to reinforce their own power. They want to make the victim feel as though they are the only source of love, care, and validation in the victim's life. The narcissist knows that when someone is isolated, their ability to think clearly, make decisions, or even trust their own judgment becomes impaired. The victim becomes so emotionally dependent that they begin to believe that the narcissist is the only person who can provide them with meaning and purpose. Isolation serves another critical purpose. It prevents the victim from gaining perspective. Without external influences, advice, or validation, the victim remains trapped in a cycle of manipulation, guilt, and fear. The narcissist is able to perpetuate their version of reality, convincing the victim that their emotional needs can only be met by the narcissist themselves. This stifles any opportunity for the victim to heal, grow, or regain independence. The damage caused by isolation is long-living. It leaves the victim with a fractured sense of self, an inability to trust others, and a deep sense of loneliness that can persist long after the relationship ends. Even if the victim escapes the immediate presence of the narcissist, They may carry the scars of isolation for years, struggling with anxiety, depression, or a fear of being alone. The narcissist's spirit of isolation does more than break physical connections. It deeply scars the heart and soul, making it difficult to rebuild relationships or trust others again. The narcissist isolates because they cannot share control. They cannot thrive in environments where others have power or influence. By keeping their victims emotionally and psychologically isolated, they maintain dominance. The true tragedy is not just the broken relationships or the sense of loneliness, but the way isolation distorts the victim's reality. They are made to believe that they are unworthy of love, that they are incapable of finding true connection outside the narcissist's shadow, and that their worth is forever tied to the narcissist's approval. Isolation is a form of bondage, and until the victim recognizes it for what it is, they remain trapped in a prison of their own making. Narcissism is not just a personal flaw or a behavioral issue. It is a deeply rooted spiritual condition that manifests through the demonic spirits of pride, manipulation, deception, and isolation. These spirits work in tandem to create a web of control, dominance, and emotional bondage. Narcissists are not just individuals seeking attention or admiration. They are vessels through which these dark forces work to tear apart relationships, destroy self-worth, and strip others of their identity and dignity. The spirit of pride builds a false sense of superiority where the narcissist believes they are entitled to everything, while the spirit of manipulation uses emotional tactics to control, deceive, and make others feel dependent. Deception distorts reality, creating an illusion that isolates the victim from the truth. And finally, the spirit of isolation cuts off the victim from support systems, leaving them emotionally vulnerable and trapped in a cycle of manipulation and fear. But here's the powerful truth. You are not meant to live under the control of these spirits. You were created for greatness, for love, and for connection. The enemy seeks to rob you of your power, your purpose, and your identity in Christ. The spirit of narcissism through pride, manipulation, deception, and isolation works tirelessly to disconnect you from the truth of who you are and the strength you carry within. But you must recognize these forces for what they are, lies designed to keep you in bondage. The road to freedom begins with truth. The truth that your worth is not dependent on the narcissist's approval or validation. The truth that you are loved, you are worthy, and you have a purpose beyond the narcissist's twisted reality. When you reject the lie of narcissism and stand firm in the truth of who you are, you break the chains of isolation, manipulation, and deception. You have the power to reclaim your life. Do not allow the spirit of pride to convince you that you are inferior, that you are less than, or that you are not worthy of love and respect. You are a child of God, and He has given you the strength to overcome any lie or spirit that seeks to rob you of your identity. It's time to expose the darkness, to speak the truth, and to break free from the destructive influence of narcissism. Rise above the lies. Embrace your true identity. You are not alone. The spirit of narcissism may try to bind you, but the spirit of truth, love, and healing will set you free. Stand tall, for your life is greater than the manipulation, the deception, and the isolation that the enemy would have you believe is your reality. You are free, and you are meant for more.